Hey everybody, I just exited my first business. I sold my Amazon FBA business for $350,000. In this video, I'm going to be going through my initial reactions and some key takeaways after going through this process. I think you're going to get a lot of value out of today's video. Hey everybody, if you don't know, my name's Lamar and I'm a 7-figure serial entrepreneur helping you start and scale your online business. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos that I'm coming out with weekly. And if you got value out of today's video, please hit that thumbs up button. It means a lot so that I know that you're getting value out of today's content. So today's video is just going to be kind of a personal reflection. I'm going to be talking about my experience of selling my Amazon FBA business. And really the experience starts, 7 years ago. I started my Amazon business at the beginning of 2016 with $500. I completely bootstrapped everything. I just continued to reinvest the profits or the money that I made from selling my initial batch of inventory on Amazon and reinvest that inventory back into expanding more products or into marketing. Now it's been quite a roller coaster ride. And as I just mentioned, I have now exited that business. I sold it at the beginning of February for $350,000 and I'm very happy with that outcome. Now, the 6 months pretty much leading up to the sale, the business was only making about $6,000 to $7,000 a month in net profit. And I ended up selling it at a 27x multiple on that net profit. So when you calculate it, it actually was a $175,000 valuation, and then I had about $175,000 in inventory. Now, yes, I know that that's a lot of inventory, but I also had a lot of SKUs. I wouldn't say that my business was perfect by any means, and my SKU count was one of those issues. And with each one of those products or SKUs that I had came a decent amount of inventory. And post-COVID, as you guys know, with the supply chains and everything that was going on, I, overly stocked my product just to ensure there were no, out of stocks. But then therefore, that also built up a large amount of inventory. Anyways, it was equal to about $175,000. So the total package deal for both the valuation and the inventory came out to be about $350,000. I'm very happy for getting bought out and selling at that price point. And then when you factor in the fact that I only started with $500 and completely bootstrapped everything to date, that's a pretty good outcome. I'm very happy with that. But this by no means was a perfect execution, right? There was so many learnings. There were so many ups and downs in running this Amazon FBA business. And that's really the first point or main takeaway that I want to talk about today, which is timing. So my Amazon FBA business pretty much peaked in 2019. That's when I was doing about $1 million a year in revenue. And that was my best year ever for Amazon FBA. If I would have sold in 2019, I probably could have sold for 2 to 3 times what I had sold today for. Just because the profit margin was so much better in 2019 and my revenue was so much higher. In addition to that, the trend line was, positive, or it was increasing. Month over month, we were seeing growth and it was a good year. But that all said, 2019 is in hindsight. I started thinking about selling my Amazon FBA business about 2.5 years ago, pretty much. So you could say at the middle of 2021, I pretty much started to prepare to sell the Amazon FBA business. I started to strip out all non-essential costs. That started to make the business very lean and started to maximize the profit. But when I started listing my Amazon FBA business, and this was over at the beginning of 2022, so the business was actually listed for an entire year. I started at a 42 multiple. And over the course of 2022, that entire year, we just continued to lower and lower the multiple. Now, there's a couple of factors going on there, but I ended up selling the business business at a 27x multiple. So you can see that there is just a gradual decline in the valuation over that time period. Now, why was that taking place? Well, for starters, I wasn't building the business anymore. Okay, I pretty much had checked out of continuing to grow the Amazon FBA business. I was pretty much just in a maintenance mode. I was just trying to sustain the net profit and strip out any non-essential expenses. Now, while I was successful in maintaining the net profit year over year, my revenue was continuing to drop over the past year and a half. Now, obviously, that is not something that you want to be happening when you're trying to sell your business, right? You want to be painting this growth picture that, the new buyer is acquiring your business and all they have to do is keep doing the same things that you're doing. You don't want them to have to come in and kind of fix the business, which is kind of what you could say was going to need to happen a little bit in, the business that I was selling. And that was mainly just because I really wasn't in builder mode anymore, right? I had rearranged, I changed my focus into other businesses that I am working on and building, and Amazon FBA just kind of went into a cruise control. And because of that, then the business started to suffer. In addition to that, the global economy was pretty bad. Over the past year, there's been a lot of scare of a recession. The stock market has been way down. Interest rates are very high, so it's very challenging for people to get loans and, acquire businesses or take on risk. So the timing of the general economy also was not working in my favor. So then when you also have the global outlook on the economy, you now also have a lot of sellers. So there's a lot of online businesses that are up for sale, and the multiples are quite attractive because they know that the type of environment that they're in, you can basically get businesses at a pretty good discount right now. So all of those events combined have led to what I was able to sell my business for, which is the 27x multiple. So in summary, the timing at which you sell a business is probably one of the most important factors in building your wealth as an entrepreneur. If you time it right, it can really be game changing for you. And if you time it wrong, then the total valuation of your business can be dramatically cut in half or even lower, like it was in my case. The next key takeaway that I want to talk about is the process at which I sold my business. Now, when I first started thinking about selling my business, I reached out to every aggregator that I could find online. As you guys probably know, there's lots of Amazon aggregators, and about a year and a half ago, there's much more hype around them. An Amazon FBA aggregator is basically just a business or a fund that's out there acquiring various different Amazon businesses. They are bringing them all under a single portfolio and then operating them at operational efficiencies. So, they're able to share resources between the various Amazon FBA businesses, therefore reducing their overhead costs and, operating them at this more efficiency level. So I reached out to all of the Amazon aggregators that I could find. For one reason or another, I did have a couple of interested parties, but for one reason or another, mainly based on my scale, I just wasn't big enough for them. I didn't qualify, or they just weren't interested in pursuing a further conversation with me. And today, they're even more selective in the criteria that they're looking for when acquiring a business or absorbing it into their aggregator. And one of those criteria is obviously the revenue. In my revenue case, for the number of SKUs and the number of brands that I had underneath my Amazon FBA business, for many of those aggregators, I was pretty much disqualified. So that left me with the brokers out there. So I had reached out to 2 brokers and ended up going with Empire Flippers. So by using Empire Flippers, there was, inherently some good and some bad things with the entire process of selling the business. Let's start with the good. The good thing is that they had a team that was assigned to my business, and they worked very hard on my financials. And I had learned a lot about going through that process and how a broker or a business that specializes in buying and selling of other online businesses, how they structure their financials. And it was just a little bit different than how, I was running the financials, how my accountant was organizing the financials. So it was very interesting to just see the profit and loss statement, how they built that, and just going through and the amount of work that they put into putting together the financial reporting so that then we could present this to the buyers. So that was a positive because it was a good learning experience, and they worked hard in cleaning all of that up and making the business look very good. And then the other good thing is that they obviously sold the business. So eventually, after a year and a half of starting the process with them, we eventually got the business sold. That's also a positive. And I'm very appreciative in the fact that they were able to finally help me and deliver on that, which is what we set out to do in the first place. Now let's talk about the bad. The bad is that they took 15% of the valuation. So the valued business was $175,000. They ended up taking 15% of that. Now, that to me is a huge fee. It's basically they're coming in right at the end and they're claiming 15% equity on the business for literally just selling it. You can have one opinion or the other on this, but 15% is a huge amount. It took them a year and a half. Over that entire time, the valuation continued to drop, whether it was their fault or not. There's speculation on all of these different variables that contributed to the decreased valuation. And it wasn't a fast process, and they took 15% from the valuation. So that's a big chunk to just give up for selling the business. The other thing that I didn't like about Empire Flippers or their process was that they didn't use a purchase agreement for selling the actual asset or the business. So the agreement between myself and the buyer was their terms of service. And their terms of service was pretty much a boilerplate, like typical website terms of service with some clauses in there, protecting both parties. There was virtually no specific details around our actual deal. This all is good and fine if there's no problems. And because they were kind of just using this standard terms of service and no specific purchase agreement, there's many gray areas with the contract. Namely, there was no deadlines outlined in the contract. So literally at every single stage, so from the due diligence point to this second due diligence period that was after the sale, to when the money needed to be deposited, to when the earnouts needed to be deposited, there was no hard structure or deadlines. And that left basically everything up for delays, right? So there was delays at every single period or point in the actual process because none of these timelines were outlined in the contract. And those deadlines would have been clearly outlined if we had used a purchase agreement. So I really didn't like the fact that they do their deals with this terms of service and not with the purchase agreement. To me, that was a major red flag, but I was already way too deep in the process to throw up a barrier, and I just wanted to sell the business literally at that time. So I didn't want to stir the pot right at the end when everything was kind of going through, and I didn't become aware of this until there was already a buyer there and he was committed and we just wanted the deal to close. But going forward, I will make it a requirement in every single business that I buy or sell going forward. I will for sure be using a purchase agreement to avoid any confusion, any gray area around the buying and the selling of the asset. Another bad thing with this process, or that was not outlined, I should say, in the purchase agreement, was terms around the inventory. So some of my inventory was a consumable. We didn't know, but some of the inventory had an expiration date that was expiring 2 months after the sale date. So the new owner had purchased the business and the inventory on the sale date, and then 2 months post-sale date, the inventory expired. Because the inventory and clauses around the inventory were not outlined on the actual purchase agreement, the buyer tried to reopen the negotiation around the terms of the inventory. Now, this was completely and totally outrageous because the sale had already closed. This new owner had owned the business. He had owned the inventory, had plenty of time to sell the inventory, and he had plenty of time, multiple periods of inspection and due diligence that was offered to him, and this had never come up earlier. Still, the buyer and empire flippers didn't find that it was fair, and they believed that it was both parties' responsibility to make amends with the expired inventory. Now, again, because this wasn't outlined in a formal sales agreement or purchase agreement, then this became, or it fell into a gray area again. So what ended up happening is that I discounted some of the inventory, to kind of compensate and make amends with everybody involved. But I really didn't feel like it was my responsibility to do that because I was done and clear of the business. Like, this is no longer my business. Why am I still involved with the inventory that you purchased and for your lack of due diligence? So that was a big problem, but whatever. I think we made amends and everybody's good and happy at this point. The last big takeaway for me was to celebrate. I've been building this business for over 7 years. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I completely had bootstrapped it. So finally being able to sell this business and exit it completely was a huge achievement for both myself and my team that was involved. So I decided to give 1 or 2% to key team members that were involved in growing the business, getting it to this point and successfully selling it. 1 to 2%, this pretty much worked out to be about 1 or 2 months worth of salary to each team member. Now, I never promised them equity when they signed on. This was purely just a bonus that I decided to reward them with for, successfully selling the business and getting to this point. To be honest, I wouldn't have been able to even get to this point and sell the business if it wasn't for them. So I wanted to reward them and show them my appreciation for helping the business get to this point. And I also wanted to celebrate with buying something for myself. So I don't know if you can see this, but I got this nice watch here. It's a Panerai by Tempo. I'm a very minimalist person. I really don't buy many things for myself. I try to really keep the absolute bare minimum. I only buy absolute necessities. I invest all of my money really back into my business. But I did want to buy something for myself just for all of the hard work and reward myself for this accomplishment. So I decided on getting this watch, and I'm very happy with this purchase. I'm wearing it pretty much every single day, so it's definitely getting a lot of use. And who knows, it might even spark a little watch collection that I'm going to be continuing to build here as I sell other businesses in the future. So those are just some of the main takeaways and initial thoughts that I've been having over the past couple of months of going through the final stages of selling my Amazon FBA business. I'm definitely going to take a break from Amazon FBA for the near-term future. Not to say I won't go back into e-commerce or Amazon FBA, because I might. The reality is I know a lot about Amazon FBA and, selling physical products online now, and I would be able to absolutely crush it. I would know exactly what products, what brands, how to scale, how to work Amazon. I have a very good understanding of logistics, supply chain, manufacturing. I mean, there's really a lot that goes involved with selling online, and I have a very good understanding of all the inner workings of running and operating an e-commerce and Amazon FBA business. So I might revisit Amazon FBA in the future, but for the time being, I'm going to take a break and kick back, relax on, finally being able to sell this business, and now shift my primary focus to ReferralHero, which is not a physical product business at all and is a software SaaS-based business. So I'm very excited about trying a completely different new business model, taking what I've learned from Amazon FBA and applying it into software. So I hope that you got value out of today's video, guys. Like I said, this is just a personal reflection, sharing my experiences with you so that you can go out there and learn from my experience as well. Until next time, guys, get out there and crush it, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace.